Life in New York City in the 1980s was filled with colorful and controversial events. This decade had a significant impact on the development of the city, both in terms of culture and art, as well as socially and economically. In the early 1980s, New York City faced a number of challenges that had a significant impact on the daily lives of its residents. High crime rates, economic decline, and a drug epidemic characterized the city during this time. Crime, especially in neighborhoods such as the Bronx and Brooklyn, reached high levels, causing residents to feel unstable and unsafe. The unemployment situation was also tense. As a result of the economic downturn and structural changes in the city's industry, many jobs were lost, leaving many people unemployed. This worsened the economic situation of many families and increased inequality. In the 1980s, New York City was plagued by a drug epidemic, especially cocaine. Many people suffered from addiction, and the drug trade became a major source of crime in the city. Fighting drugs became a priority for law enforcement. Despite these problems, however, New York City remained a center of cultural and creative energy in the 1980s. The city was a place where talented artists, musicians, writers, and actors converged in the pursuit of creativity and self-expression. Galleries and art exhibitions attracted people from all over the world, and the New York Festival of the Arts was an important event in the cultural life of the city. New York's music scene in the 1980s was at its peak. Hip-hop, disco, and new wave were popular genres that reflected the spirit of the times. Nightclubs and music venues such as Studio 54 and CBGB's became legendary places where musicians and audiences gathered to enjoy the unique atmosphere and music. Social and cultural movements also played an important role in the life of the city during this time. The feminist movement, the gay and lesbian rights movement, and the civil rights struggle were active and important movements that inspired and mobilized people. Protests, rallies, and marches became commonplace on the streets of New York City, where people expressed their beliefs and their desire for social justice. Sporting events also played an important role in New York City life during the 1980s. Baseball, basketball, and hockey were popular sports, and teams such as the New York Yankees and New York Knicks attracted huge numbers of fans. Games and competitions became not only sporting events, but also a means of bringing the city's community together. The architectural appearance of New York City also underwent changes in the 1980s. Skyscrapers such as the Empire State Building and the Twin Towers still graced the city skyline. However, during this time, some historic buildings began to disappear to make way for new construction. This sparked discussions about preserving the city's historic heritage and transforming it. New York City's transportation system was also the subject of controversy and change in the 1980s. The subway, while remaining the primary means of transportation for many residents, suffered from safety and maintenance issues. During this time, efforts were made to modernize the public transportation system and improve conditions for passengers. Thus, life in New York City in the 1980s was full of contradictions and problems. The city faced problems of crime, economic decline, and drug epidemics, yet continued to be a center of cultural and creative energy. New Yorkers actively expressed their beliefs and fought for social justice, while sporting events and architectural transformations reflected the dynamism and diversity of the city. The 1980s also saw significant economic and business changes in New York City. The city became a place where financial services and stock exchange activity developed. Wall Street, located in Lower Manhattan, became a symbol of America's financial power and ambition. Large corporations and investors gathered here to trade stocks and conduct business negotiations. The economic boom and the development of the financial sector led to a significant increase in housing and rental prices in New York City. Many neighborhoods, such as Manhattan and Brooklyn, underwent gentrification as wealthier residents settled areas previously occupied by the poor. This led to a rise in the cost of living and increased social inequality. It is also worth noting that during the 1980s, New York City became a place for various cultural and social movements. People from different ethnic groups and immigrants came together to fight for their rights and recognition. Many organizations and communities emerged in the city that fought discrimination and violence and advocated for a tolerant and diverse society. The New York City of the 1980s also witnessed significant changes in the city's infrastructure. Various redevelopment and development projects were launched in the city during this time. New bridges, roads, and public spaces were built. Central Park in New York City also underwent significant changes in the 1980s. The park underwent restoration work, including restoring green spaces, reconstructing ponds and pedestrian walkways. This made the park more attractive to residents and tourists, and it became one of the most popular places for outdoor recreation and entertainment in New York City. Overall, the 1980s were a period of significant change and cultural flourishing for New York City. The city continued to play an important role in the economy, finance, and culture of the United States, attracting talented and ambitious people from all over the world.